Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 185. We're going to discuss New Moon, released in 2009, and Twilight, I guess. I watched these on Disney Plus. I had not seen these before. This time, we're going to start with the prominent crew and cast, focusing on New Moon rather than Twilight. You can find links to the more complete credit list for New Moon and Twilight in the show notes. I know I say this before, but this is going to be a long one, and if you want to jump forward, there should be links to that next section in the below. The film was directed by Chris Weitz. It was written by Melissa Rosenberg and Stephanie Meyer. The special effects were by Tidbits Studio and Prime Focus. Chris Weitz is the son of an actress and novelist turned agent, and he grew up immersed in cinema. Weitz began his career writing Ants with his younger brother Paul. They followed up by writing and directing About a Boy, which earned an Oscar nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay, and wrote for the follow-up TV series. Chris made his solo directorial debut with the ambitious adaptation of The Golden Compass. He blew up directing New Moon, the highest grossing film of his career. Notable recent projects include writing Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and writing and producing Murderbot. Melissa Rosenberg broke into TV in the 90s, writing for series such as Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, The OC, and Dexter, where she rose to co-executive producer and earned multiple WGA and Emmy nominations. She was the sole screenwriter on all 5 Twilight films, which grossed over $3.3 billion worldwide, making her the highest grossing female screenwriter in history at the time. After Twilight, Rosenberg made history again by running Jessica Jones, the first Marvel series centered on a female superhero. Stephanie Meyer's Twilight Saga is one of the best-selling book series of all time and a global pop culture phenomenon. She earned an English literature degree from my alma mater, Brigham Young University. Her 4-book series, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn, sold over 160 million copies worldwide, was translated into 37 languages, and spent years atop bestseller lists. All of this is so far. Meyer was closely involved with the film adaptations of her work. Though she largely stepped back from public life and new releases in 2020, Meyer remains one of the most commercially successful authors of the 21st century and a defining influence on YA literature. Tippett Studio is a pioneering visual effects and animation house co-founded in 1984 by 2-time Oscar winner Phil Tippett and his wife Jules Roman, who served as president. Inspired by Ray Harryhausen, Tippett graduated from UC Irvine in 1974, worked briefly at Cascade Pictures, then joined ILM in 1975. There he created the holographic chess scene for Star Wars and designed Jabba the Hutt and the Rancor from Return of the Jedi, earning his first Academy Award. In 1984, he left ILM and from his garage produced the 10-minute stop-motion short Prehistoric Beast, which led directly to the studio's founding. Early specialties were stop-motion and Tippett's own go-motion technique, stop-motion enhanced with motion control robotics. Landmark early credits included the ED-209 from RoboCop, effects for Willow, and an Emmy-winning expansion of Prehistoric Beast into the documentary Dinosaur. The 90s brought the digital shift. For Jurassic Park, Tippett's planned stop-motion dinosaurs gave way to ILM CGI, including his famous line, "I've gone extinct," marking the turning point. His anatomical expertise still shaped the creatures, earning the studio its second Oscar and a BAFTA. Rapid growth followed with over 500 bug shots for Starship Troopers. The 2000s and 2010s saw Tippett contribute to the Twilight, Harry Potter, and Pirates of the Caribbean franchises, plus The Force Awakens. The studio also built a strong television presence with The Mandalorian and The Witcher. In 2022, it launched Tippett Productions under Gary Mundell. In March 2024, Indian VFX leader Phantom FX acquired an 80% stake, and 2 months later, the studio restructured. The partnership fueled new work on Alien Romulus, Skeleton Crew, Ironheart, and The Mandalorian and Grogu. In November 2025, Tippett became part of the newly formed Phantom Media Group. Phil Tippett's decades-long passion project, the stop-motion horror epic Mad God, sounds very much like something I need to track down and watch. The cast includes Kristen Stewart as Bella Swan, Billy Burke as Charlie Swan, Anna Kendrick as Jessica, Michael Welch as Mike, Justin Chon as Eric, Christian Serratos as Angela, Robert Pattinson as Edward Cullen, Peter Fasinelli as Dr. Carlisle Cullen, Ashley Greene as Alice Cullen, Elizabeth Reeser as Esme Cullen, Kellen Lutz as Emmett Cullen, Jackson Rathbone as Jasper Hale, Vicki Reed as Rosalie Hale, Taylor Lautner as Jacob Black, Chasky Spencer as Sam Ule, Tyson Houseman as Quill Atira, Kiowa Gordon as Embry Call, Alex Miraz as Paul, Bronson Pelletier as Jared, Michael Sheen as Arrow, Jamie Campbell Bower as Caius, Christopher Heyerdahl as Marcus, Rochelle Lefevre as Victoria, Eddie Gathegi as Laurent, Gil Birmingham as Billy Black, Graham Greene as Harry Clearwater, Tinsel Corey as Emily, and Dakota Fanning as Jane. We discussed Michael Sheen when we first covered Underworld. We also saw him in Rise of the Lycans. We discussed Rachel Lefevre when we covered Big Wolf on Campus. We also discussed Graham Greene when we covered Big Wolf on Campus, and then saw his additional work on Wolf Lake. We discussed Tinsel Corey when we covered Hybrid. Taylor Lautner began training in martial arts at the age of 6, earning black belts in karate and taekwondo by 10. He pursued acting, landing his first role at 9 in a commercial. At 12, he appeared in Cheaper by the Dozen 2 and as Shark Boy in The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl. At 15, Lautner was cast as Jacob Black in Twilight, the Quillette teen who transforms into a massive wolf. He reprised the role across all 5 films, bulking up 30 pounds between the first and second to keep the part and avoid being recast. The franchise made him a global teen idol. Post-Twilight, Lautner headed the action thriller Abduction and appeared in ensemble films like Valentine's Day and Grown Ups 2. He's developing an absolutely intriguing scripted series starring himself entitled Taylor Lautner, Werewolf Hunter, that I am looking forward to. Chasky Spencer initially pursued photography before discovering a passion for acting. Spencer's career began in the early 2000s with roles in the TV miniseries Into the West and films like Skins. He rose to international prominence, portraying the werewolf pack leader Sam Ule in the Twilight Saga films. Subsequent films include leading roles in indie dramas. On television, Spencer has delivered standout performances in Sneaky Pete, Banshee, Jessica Jones, and the co-lead role of Eli Whip in the amazing series The English. Check it out. More recently, he starred in the Peacock horror thriller Teacup. Tyson Houseman's first role was as Quill Atira, a young werewolf in New Moon. After the franchise, he has relocated to Montreal and has one more credit in Feed the Devil. Kiowa Gordon was born in Berlin, Germany. His mother, Camille Nighthorse Gordon, was an actress who encouraged his early interest in performing. Previously a medal of the progressive metal band Touché, Gordon shifted focus to acting and landed his breakout role as the shape-shifting Embry Call in New Moon. Post-franchise, he's appeared in highly rated indie films like The Lesser Blessed, Shadow Wolves, and Blood Quantum. He's done TV with shows like The Red Road, Roswell, New Mexico, The Liberator, and, since 2022, the lead role of Navajo tribal police officer Jim Chi in Dark Winds. Alex Meraz initially trained in breakdancing, indigenous and contemporary dance, capoeira, and mixed martial arts, winning karate tournaments. An avid painter and illustrator, Meraz debuted in the New World, but his breakout came as the hot-tempered werewolf Paul Lahote in New Moon. Post-franchise, he appeared in Suicide Squad, The Walking Dead, Bright, and The Last Sun. Recent credits include Dark Winds and Landman. Bronson Pelletier started on TV series like RenegadePress.com and Dino Sapien. His breakthrough came as the shape-shifting Jared Cameron in New Moon. Post-franchise, he has no major new credits. Kristen Stewart's parents both worked in the entertainment industry. She began acting at age 8 and broke through at 12 opposite Jodie Foster in Panic Room. Smaller roles in Catch That Kid and Speak followed. Her life changed irrevocably when, at 17, she was cast as Bella Swan in Twilight. The 5-film saga made her the highest-grossing female lead of the era, while turning her into a paparazzi target and reluctant teen idol. After Twilight, Stewart pivoted away from franchise fare and did pictures like Adventureland, The Runaways, Clouds of Sils Maria, and American Ultra. She briefly tried big budget again with Charlie's Angels before she earned her first Oscar nomination with Spencer. Her directorial debut, The Chronology of Water, comes out this month. Future roles include Crimes of the Future and Love Lies Bleeding. Billy Burke is an American actor, musician, and screenwriter. He began singing at 9, joined a band at 15, and moved to LA in the early 90s, pursuing music before his acting took over. His screen debut was in the indie Daredreamer, followed by guest spots on Party of Five and All-American Girl. Breakthrough roles came in Along Came a Spider, and as attorney Philip Stroh on The Closer, reprised in Major Crimes. Global fame arrived with his portrayal of Charlie Swan, Bella's protective police chief father across all 5 Twilight films. He embraced genre work as Caesar in Red Riding Hood, which we will cover on this channel, as well as Drive Angry, Revolution, and Zoo. He also voiced Commissioner Gordon in Batman: The Long Halloween. Since 2022, he has starred as Fire Chief Vince Leone on the hit CBS series Fire Country. Anna Kendrick found theater at 10 and at 12 snagged a Tony nomination for High Society on Broadway. She jumped to film with Camp, then popped up as the most memorable of Bella's human friends in the Twilight movies. Real buzz started with Up in the Air, and she got an Oscar nod at 24. She backed it up with Scott Pilgrim, End of Watch, and Into the Woods. Her true breakout was Becca in Pitch Perfect, a surprise smash with 2 sequels, and that Cup song went platinum. My personal faves that she has done are her poppy voice in the Trolls movies and the stop-motion Paranormal. She just made her directing debut with The Creepy Cool Woman of the Hour and dropped the very funny memoir Scrappy Little Nobody. Michael Welch started acting at age 6 and was everywhere in the late 90s, early 2000s. 100 plus commercials, guest spots on Seventh Heaven, The X-Files, Frasier, Malcolm in the Middle, CSI, plus young Data's pal in Star Trek Insurrection. He was Luke Girardi on the beloved Joan of Arcadia. At 20, he landed Mike Newton, the awkward puppy dog classmate who pines for Bella in all 5 Twilight movies. After the saga, he went full indie genre. All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, Grimm, and a fan favorite run as Mac on Z Nation. Justin Chon, his career evolved from a teen sidekick to acclaimed Asian American filmmaker. His first major role was Just Jordan on TV before landing the Twilight saga. Chon deliberately pivoted to storytelling, reflecting his own identity. His directorial debut, Gook, a raw black and white drama set during the 1992 LA riots, premiered at Sundance and was critically acclaimed. He followed that up with the romantic drama Blue Bayou. Christian Serratos began as a child model before diving into acting at age 10. Her screen debut came in 2004 as the mischievous Susie Crabgrass on Nickelodeon's Ned's Declassified Schools Survival Guide. Serratos' breakout arrived at 18 in Twilight. Transitioning to mature roles, Serratos joined The Walking Dead in 2014, evolving from recurring to series regular by season 5 and into the main credits in season 7. Robert Pattinson is the rare teen idol who successfully rewrote his own narrative, turning global hysteria into artistic credibility without ever playing it safe. His first major role was Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, instantly becoming a recognizable face to millions of kids. At 21, he was cast as Edward Cullen in Twilight. The 5-film saga turned him into a global phenomenon. The accompanied intense fame and paparazzi scrutiny nearly derailed his career. Instead, Pattinson spent a decade systematically dismantling his own image. He sought out auteur directors in offbeat roles: Cosmopolis, The Rover, High Life, Good Time, The Lighthouse, and Mickey 17. He still found time for higher budget fare like Tenet or playing Bruce Wayne in The Batman. Peter Facinelli broke out in the late 90s with supporting roles in Can't Hardly Wait and Dancer, Texas Pop 81. Then appeared in The Scorpion King. His defining role came as the moral compass of the Cullen Coven in Twilight. Post-Twilight, he continued in indie films while also doing more television, doing shows like Nurse Jackie, American Odyssey, and Supergirl. Ashley Greene began her acting career with small television roles in shows such as Punk'd, Crossing Jordan, and Desire. She auditioned for the role of Bella Swan in Twilight, but was ultimately cast as the precognitive vampire Alice Cullen. Following the Twilight saga, Greene expanded her genre film work, including the indie drama Skateland, the horror thriller The Apparition, and the music biopic CBGB. She also lent her voice to animated and video game projects, notably portraying Barbara Gordon, Batgirl Oracle, in the video game Batman Arkham Knight, and appearing in the TV series Rogue. Elizabeth Reeser began her screen career with the soap opera Guiding Light, followed by indie films like Sweetland and The Family Stone. A recurring role on Grey's Anatomy earned her an Emmy nomination. She led the short-lived romantic comedy The X-List before landing her role in Twilight. She's balanced it with films like Stay and Young Adult. Post-Twilight, Reeser embraced genre and prestige work. Ouija, Origin of Evil, The Haunting of Hill House, which is where I first remember her, and The Handmaid's Tale. Kellen Lutz originally planned a career in the Navy SEALs, but an injury altered his course. By 17, he was modeling for Calvin Klein, Abercrombie & Fitch, and Levi's. His screen debut came with a soap cameo in The Bold and the Beautiful and small parts in Stick It and Accept It. At 22, he landed the role of Emmett Cullen in Twilight. Post-Twilight, Lutz chased action hero status: Immortals, The Legend of Hercules, and Tarzan. He appeared in Expendables 3 alongside Stallone and Statham. Starred in the faith-based drama What Men Want, and voiced characters in animated projects. Recently, he anchored the CBS action series FBI Most Wanted. Jackson Rathbone's early roles included a recurring part on Disney's Beautiful People and guest spots on The OC, close to home in Criminal Minds. At 23, he was cast in Twilight. While Twilight ran, Rathbone fronted the funk rock band 100 Monkeys, touring relentlessly and releasing indie albums. Post-franchise, he's pursued a eclectic roles like The Last Airbender and Dread. He starred in the action series Aim High. At age 13, Nikki Reed co-wrote the semi-autobiographical script for 13 with director Catherine Hardwicke. She also starred in it, earning her instant critical acclaim. At 19, she joined the Twilight saga. Post-Twilight, she deliberately chose indie and character-driven work: Empire State, In Your Eyes, and the Sleepy Hollow TV series. Jamie Campbell Bower was raised in a creative family. His mom was a music manager and his dad worked at Gibson Guitar. His acting breakthrough came at age 19 in Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, followed by his role as Caius in New Moon. He gained wider recognition as young Gellert Grindelwald in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1, and Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. On TV, he portrayed King Arthur in the series Camelot and played the terrifying mastermind villain Vecna, aka Henry Creel, aka One, in the cultural phenomena Stranger Things. A performance widely praised for its intensity. As a musician, Bower fronted the punk band Counterfeit from 2015 to 2020 before launching a solo career. His debut solo single, Run On, appeared in the Stranger Things Season 4 soundtrack. Christopher Heyerdahl launched a stage career, including seasons with the Stratford Shakespeare Festival in productions like Love, Labour's Lost, and The Changeling. His screen breakthrough came in sci-fi with roles as the Rafe Todd in Stargate Atlantis and dual parts as John Druitt and Bigfoot in Sanctuary. He gained wider fame as the brooding Marcus in New Moon. Other notable TV performances include the demonic torturer Alistair in Supernatural, the enigmatic Swede Thor Gunderson in Hell on Wheels, and Sam in Van Helsing. An accomplished hockey player who once suited up for the Ottawa Senators, recent credits include Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, The Last of Us, Dark Winds, Billy the Kid, The Borderline, and an upcoming role in Interview with the Vampire. Eddie Gathegi played basketball until a knee injury shifted his focus to acting. His breakthrough arrived with the role in Season 4 of House, followed by Cheese and Gone Baby Gone. That same year, he landed a part in Twilight. Subsequent highlights include X-Men First Class, The Blacklist and its spin-off Redemption, and Startup. Recent credits feature For All Mankind and the DC superhero Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt, in James Gunn's Superman that came out earlier this year. Gil Birmingham worked as a petrochemical engineer before pursuing pro bodybuilding in the early 80s. A talent scout discovered him in an LA gym, which led to a music video and a pivot to acting. His TV breakthrough came with guest spots on Riptide and recurring roles in Body and Soul and Into the West. His first feature film was The Doughboy, followed by The Lone Ranger. Birmingham's global fame surged with Twilight. Post-franchise, he earned acclaim as Sheriff Hammond in Hell or High Water, as well as Wind River, and recurring roles in Banshee and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Recent credits include Yellowstone, Sirens, and X-Men 97. Dakota Fanning was born into an athletic family. Her mom was a tennis player and her dad was a minor league baseball player. Her maternal grandfather was an NFL player and her aunt is a reporter for ESPN. She has a younger sister, Elle Fanning, also an actress. She did commercials before her TV debut on ER. Guest spots followed on CSI, Ally McBeal, and The Practice. Her film breakthrough arrived at 7 in I Am Sam, earning a historic Screen Actors Guild nomination, youngest ever at the time. The mid-2000s solidified her as Hollywood's busiest child star in hits like Uptown Girls, Man on Fire, War of the Worlds, Charlotte's Web, and The Secret Life of Bees. She voiced Coraline in Coraline and transitioned to edgier roles, including the controversial Hound Dog and punk rocker Cherry Curry in The Runaways opposite Kristen Stewart. Post-Twilight, she balanced indies like Night Moves and Brimstone with blockbusters, a cameo in Ocean's 8, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and The Equalizer 3. On TV, she starred in The Alienist, The First Lady, The Perfect Couple, and Ripley. Fanning joined the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences at age 12, the youngest ever. Okay, I'm showing up fashionably late to the Twilight hate train. And honestly, the whole series was never made with me as the target audience anyway. I get it. I'm a grown man who would rather watch paint dry than sit through another sparkling vampire slow motion stare off. Still, here's my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth from someone who's watched the movie. Because a werewolf is a major character in the later movies, and I made a personal vow to watch every werewolf movie. Twilight works. Kind of. Sort of. If you squint and lobotomize the critical part of your brain. It's junk food romance. Sweet, empty calories that taste amazing at 2 a.m. when you're 15 and heartbroken over someone who doesn't know you exist. The longing looks, the forbidden love, the dramatic rain-soaked confessions. It's all engineered to make your heart do that fluttery thing while you ignore the fact that nobody in this universe has a personality beyond obsessed with Bella or wants to eat Bella. The second you actually think about any of this, the second you tug on even one loose thread, the entire sweater comes apart in your hands. The world building collapses under the weight of its own nonsense. The characters turn out to be paper dolls dressed in brooding, and the romance everyone swoons over is at best a masterclass in toxic dependency, and at worst, it's a grooming manual. Pull on any thread here: biology, lore, consent, basic common sense, and the whole thing unravels faster than a clearance rack scarf. And yet, millions of people loved it, lived it, tattooed quotes from it. So, yeah, it's not for me, but I see how it hooked the people it was baked for. I just wish it didn't fall apart the moment you treat it like it's supposed to make some sense. If you're here strictly for werewolf content, New Moon is definitely the one you want. The transformation scenes slap, the wolf fights are surprisingly intense for a PG-13 film, and Taylor Lautner's glow up is a cultural event. Just turn it off when Alice re-enters the picture. The first movie, Twilight, has no wolf appearances, so maybe just fast forward that one to the baseball scene and call it a day. As a little bit of history, in the summer of 2003, Stephanie Meyer, a 29-year-old Latter-day Saint housewife in Arizona with 3 young children, an English literature degree, and no professional writing experience, woke from a dream of a sparkling vampire and a mortal girl in a sunlit meadow. Within 3 months, she had written an entire novel. She titled it Twilight. What followed was one of the most improbable success stories in modern publishing. Meyer sent the manuscript to 15 agents. 14 passed. The 15th, Jody Reamer, recognized something in the pages and signed her immediately. In 2003, Little Brown and Company's young adult imprint paid an astonishing $750K for a 3-book deal. When Twilight finally appeared in bookstores, it looked like just another vampire romance. Within a year, it was the biggest phenomenon since Harry Potter. Teenage girls and their mothers devoured it. Midnight release parties sprang up overnight, and fan sites multiplied like moss in Forks, Washington. The sequels arrived on an almost yearly rhythm. New Moon landed in 2006, Eclipse in 2007, and Breaking Dawn in 2008. Each book demolished the sales records of its predecessor. Breaking Dawn alone moved 1.3 million copies in its first 24 hours, prompting bookstores to stay open past midnight and fans to camp out in costume. By the time the 4th volume hit shelves, the series had spent more than 200 weeks at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and sold well over 100 million copies worldwide in 15 languages. Twilight didn't merely succeed. It rewrote the rules of young adult publishing. It proved that a chaste, female-driven supernatural romance could outsell every other genre on Earth, and publishers scrambled to flood the market with imitators. None ever matched the original's feverish devotion. The book's Mormon underpinnings, abstinence until marriage, eternal families, patriarchal protection, drew both adoration from conservative readers and sharp criticism from others. Yet that very tension helped the saga straddle church book clubs and secular bedrooms alike. Hollywood smelled blood in the water. The 5 movies, released between 2008 and 2012, grossed more than $3 billion worldwide and transformed Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart, and Taylor Lautner into superstars. The cultural temperature peaked around the 2-part Breaking Dawn adaptation and then cooled almost overnight. Meyer has since released a gender-swapped companion novel and the long-awaited Edward perspective retelling Midnight Sun. But the wildfire had already burned itself out. What remains is a permanent shift in the landscape. A stay-at-home mom sat down at a computer and built an empire that redefined young adult fiction for an entire generation. That, more than the sparkling vampires, is the real Twilight legend. Okay, let's cover the synopsis. We got to go over Twilight fast. Moody teenager Bella Swan moves to Rainy Forks, Washington, and becomes obsessed with brooding, diamond-skinned vampire Edward Cullen. Jacob Black mentioned his Quillette tribe's legend about descending from wolves, planting an obvious hint for the sequel. So now let's cover the synopsis of New Moon. This film hits the age issue head-on, both Edward being 90 years older than Bella, and her worries about visibly aging while Edward won't. Edward also won't turn Bella into a vampire, aka have sex with her, no matter how much she wants it. Edward dumps Bella and ghosts her when he finally, a movie and a half later, realizes that being around vampires is actually dangerous for a human. The whole Cullen clan leaves Forks. She falls into a 4-month-long depression montage. Jacob Black tries to get her out of it by rebuilding a couple motorbikes with her. Too much of the movie is Bella narrating emails or leaving voicemails. Laurent figures out that the Cullens have left Bella unprotected. Before he can snack on her, 5 of the biggest wolves I've ever seen show up and chase him off. Turns out the Quillette tribe are hereditary werewolf protectors who only trigger when vampires are near. But I thought the Cullens have been in Forks for a few decades already, so let it go. Bella learns Jacob's secret and joins the pack as an honorary little sister. Jacob's pack hunts Victoria as she tries to get revenge on Edward by killing Bella. Eventually, Bella cliff dives to trigger a vision of Edward. Bella is made of bad decisions. Jacob rescues her. Now, Edward believes that Bella is dead for plot reasons. He plans suicide by Vampire Council in Italy. Bella races to a big reunion. Arrow and the council test Bella, and they find her immune to vampiric powers. Well, then, why can Alice have visions of her? No, I'm not going to dwell on plot holes. Alice predicts Bella will be a vampire someday, which, duh. And just like that, Bella and Edward are a couple again. He asks her to marry him. Unfortunately, the wolves are sidelined for the last act. Now, say what you will about New Moon and the broader franchise, but when those wolves finally show up, the film suddenly feels like it's playing in a different league. For a franchise that began with sparkly vampires and moody staring contests, the werewolf sequences are shockingly visceral, technically ambitious, and frankly, the best thing on screen. The first time Jacob Black phases, the transformation is over in seconds. A flash of heat, a shirt exploding off of Taylor Lautner's newly jacked torso, and an almost liquid eruption of fur as his body surges into a colossal wolf. There is no slow, agonizing, bone-cracking crawl like an American Werewolf in London, or the rubbery prosthetics of the classic Universal era. Instead, director Chris Weitz and Tidbits Studio, part of the teams that gave us the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park and the bugs in Starship Troopers, they chose speed and violence. The shift is an explosion. Skin ripples, muscles bulge outward, and the wolf bursts into an existence like it's been fired out of a cannon. That velocity is deliberate, because these aren't traditional werewolves cursed by the moon. They're Quillette shapeshifters, triggered purely by vampire proximity or rage. The lack of a lunar requirement frees the effects team from the usual slow reveal under moonlight choreography and lets them lean into the raw primal fury. The wolves themselves are breathtaking for 2009. Horse-sized, sleek, and rendered with a realism that still holds up 15 years later. Every strand of fur moves independently. Every muscle flexes under their skin, and their eyes carry real personality. Jacob's warm amber gaze is recognizably human, even in wolf form. Tippett Studio reportedly spent nearly the entire increased VFX budget on these creatures, and it shows. What's most impressive is how expressive the werewolves remain. When Sam's pack circles Laurent in the forest, their coordinated menace feels like a living military unit. In a film that often gets fairly mocked for its brooding pacing and purple dialogue, the werewolf transformations arrive like a shot of adrenaline. They're fast, brutal, and strangely beautiful. Proof that even in the middle of a sparkly teen romance, a great effects house can still deliver something that makes you sit up and say, okay, that was actually awesome. Okay, so let's cover lore. Stephanie Meyer discards full moons, silver bullets, and tragic loss of control, crafting perhaps the most idiosyncratic lycanthropy in modern fiction. In the Twilight Saga, werewolves aren't a global curse or a contagious virus. So far, they're Quillette tribal descendants whose powers awaken only when vampires are near. The moon is irrelevant. The trigger is proximity to cold ones or raw anger. One day, Jacob Black is a lanky teen tinkering with motorcycles. The next, the vampire appears, and his ancient gene flips on like a light switch. Transformations are brutal and nearly instantaneous. Skin splits, fur explodes outwards, and every shirt in Forks is instantly ruined. And a lot of jorts are destroyed. The wolf retains full human consciousness and joins a telepathic hive mind that broadcasts every thought in crystal clarity, making flawless coordination effortless and private moments impossible. Traditional weaknesses vanish. Silver is harmless. Only vampire fangs or another wolf's jaws can kill them. And above all, these wolves are guardians. They're not monsters, tribal protectors who can stop shifting once the vampire threat fades. Meyer transforms the werewolf from doomed loner into the ultimate team player. Bigger, stronger, warmer, emotionally open, and perpetually shirtless. It's a supernatural upgrade engineered to position Jacob as the perfect counterpoint to Edward's cold, brooding immortality. Call them what you will. Shapeshifters who happen to choose massive wolves as their combat form, but this lore divergence wildly from traditional werewolf mythology. It exists not to frighten readers, but to give Bella Swan the warmest, most alive second option in her love triangle. Speaking of that love triangle, Jacob Black was never meant to be a legitimate romantic rival to Edward Cullen. In Meyer's novel, his role is heartbreakingly clear. He's the safety net Bella uses after Edward abandons her in the woods. He's warmth, distraction, and temporary comfort until her vampire returns. Bella states it repeatedly. She loves Jacob, but she's in love with Edward. The distinction is absolute. Meyer's moral universe operates on predestined monogamous soulmates. In the source material, Jacob never had a chance. The book told us so from the beginning. So why did millions worldwide suddenly wear Team Jacob shirts and argue passionately on behalf of the werewolf? Because the film version of New Moon created an authentic romantic rival that the book never did. Director Chris Weitz, Tippett Studios' visual effects team, and 16-year-old Taylor Lautner, who arrived on set transformed into a living statue, turned Jacob Black into something that was genuinely, viscerally compelling. But the film doesn't just show us Jacob as Bella's friend. It argues for him. The cinematography is doing the heavy lifting. The camera lingers on bare torsos with the same reverence the first film devoted to Edward's sparkle. Slow motion shots of the wolf pack running through the forest. Shirtless scenes in the rain held a beat too long. Close-up of Jacob's hand cradling Bella's face with a tenderness Edward's marble-cold touch can never quite match. The visual language screams, this boy is a viable romantic option, in ways the book's Edward-obsessed narration never does. The wolves are everything the Cullens aren't. They're warm where the vampires are cold, physical where Edward is restrained, and emotionally available where the Cullen family is distant. Edward spends 2 films self-loathing and leaving Bella for her own good. Jacob offers sunshine, motorcycle lessons, and uncomplicated affection. For teenage audiences in 2009, and crucially for their moms, this was catnip. The studio saw the test footage and pivoted hard. What followed was one of the most effective rebranding campaigns in modern franchise history. Every poster, trailer, and magazine cover sold Team Jacob with ferocious intensity. The marketing didn't just present Jacob as an option, it presented him as the option. And here's what the marketing department understood that Meyer's chaste narrative didn't. The wolves could be overtly sexual in ways that the vampires never were. The Cullens, for good reason, operate under strict physical restraint. Edward and Bella's relationship is built on abstinence, control, and the constant threat that his desire might kill her. Romantic tension stretched to puritanical extremes. Now the wolves run hot, literally and figuratively, unburdened by this existential angst, though this does carry its own issues with self-control. The film codes werewolf masculinity as responsive sexuality in direct contrast to the vampire restraint. The studio leaned into werewolf equals abs and accidentally created the franchise's best marketing campaign. It was ridiculous, and it printed money. It was also deeply, troublingly problematic. Taylor Lautner was 16 during principal photography, turning 17 shortly before the November 2009 release. The target demographic was teenage girls, but the loudest Team Jacob participants I saw were adult women, 20-something, 30-somethings, and the infamous Twymoms who packed midnight premieres and screamed when teenage Lautner removed his shirt. Now, the studio didn't just acknowledge this dynamic, they actively encouraged it. Shirtless posters were marketed with an intensity that would have sparked widespread outrage if the subject was female. Late-night shows cracked legal in-a-year jokes that we'd rightly condemn as predatory if the genders were reversed. Now, it is true similar patterns of sexualization have plagued teenage actresses for decades, from the Olsen twins' infamous birthday countdowns and the relentless objectification of a young Britney Spears to the broader consumption of girls' images. We've built cultural mechanisms to call out and defend against these violations, recognizing them as exploitive harms, even if we don't do it perfectly. Yet boys like Lautner often lack those same protections. Their experiences are rendered culturally invisible under assumptions that males can't be victims of sexualization, or that their bodies are inherently less vulnerable to objectification. The same standards must apply universally. A minor was packaged, marketed, and consumed as a sexual fantasy for an audience that included a significant number of adults. Lautner's gender didn't make this any less exploitative, nor did the gender of the women consuming him. It simply shielded it from the scrutiny and advocacy that female stars have increasingly and appropriately received. This wasn't accidental. The studio made a calculated choice to commodify a teenager's body for adult consumption, fully aware of what they were selling and to whom. New Moon, the film, created one of the most effective romantic rivals in teen movie history by making Jacob warm, physical, and cinematically irresistible. The Wolves looked like they could win because framing, marketing, and a cultural moment aligned to suggest that Bella had a genuine choice. New Moon, the book, never wanted that tension. Meyer's text always knew Jacob was temporary, a placeholder until Edward returned, a narrative function rather than a genuine alternative. The real love triangle was never Bella, Edward, Jacob. It was teenage fans, adult consumers, and a marketing campaign that knew exactly what it was doing. The studio sold heat against ice and made staggering amounts of money, but the cost, measured in boundary violations, predatory consumption, and normalizing the sexualization of male minors, is something the franchise has never really answered for. Now, let's move to a different complicated theme. In 2009, New Moon did something that was rare in Hollywood. It put a dozen actual indigenous actors front and center in a $700 million grossing franchise, gave them speaking roles, fight scenes, and an origin story rooted in their tribal legends. That felt revolutionary. And then you read the fine print and realize that this revolution comes with a crater-sized footnote. The core problem. The Quillette Wolfpack is only relevant because white vampires moved to town. Their ancestral spirit warrior powers lie dormant until the Cullens arrive. At this point, every teenage boy explodes into a giant wolf whose primary function is protecting, and in Jacob's case, loving, a white girl from Arizona. Their centuries-old sacred duty is retroactively rewritten to orbit Bella Swan's love life. It's the magical native protector trope dialed up to 11, the same trope from Pocahontas to Avatar. Indigenous people whose culture and superpowers conveniently activate when white protagonists need help. Here, the pack's telepathy, strength, and immortality pause all serve to keep Bella breathing and provide a warmer romantic option when Edward gets in. The optics get thornier when you remember that this was 2009. The biggest native ensemble in mainstream America film had been what? Thunderheart, Smoke Signals, Dances with Wolves? What comes to mind? Suddenly, Chasky, Spencer, Alex Mraz, Kiowa Gordon, Tyson Houseman, Bronson Pelletier, and others got actual close-ups, delivered dialogue in Quillette, and shared screen time with Kristen Stewart. Summit consulted the real Quillette Nation, donated money, and featured tribal members as extras. That consultation mattered. Actors spoke proudly about the doors that it opened. For many young indigenous kids, seeing wolves played by actual native men on the biggest screen possible was genuinely empowering, and that's all good. But that empowerment was always conditional. The wolves are noble, loyal, hyper-competent, until the plot needs Bella to choose Edward. Then they step aside, their centuries of legend reduced to a cosmic consolation prize. Their agency is borrowed, it's not owned by them. New Moon lands in an uncomfortable middle ground. It's genuine progress in representation, real faces, real language, real money returning to the community, colliding with one of Hollywood's oldest, most exhausting tropes, the magical minority whose mythology exists to save white people. The casting is a triumph. The writing remains colonial fan fiction. The wolves look like heroes. The script keeps reminding us that they're sidekicks in someone else's fairy tale. That asterisk next to the progress, it's the size of a full moon. So let's finish off with this. Say it out loud. In New Moon, Bella Swan is kind of the worst. Edward dumps her in the woods and vanishes. Is it brutal? Yes. Is it his right? Also yes. Bella isn't owed an immortal vampire boyfriend. But what follows isn't a girl slowly healing. It's a girl who weaponizes someone else's feelings to treat her heartbreak, then acts shocked when that person dares to have boundaries. Enter Jacob Black, 16, sunny, genuinely a kind kid, obviously in love with her from the moment he hands her that dreamcatcher in the first film. Bella notices. She just doesn't care, because Jacob has one use to her. Reckless activities trigger hallucinations of Edward's voice. Jacob becomes a living Edward-shaped morphine drip. She keeps him close enough to feel the warmth, but never close enough to matter. The movie makes this painfully clear. She cuddles into his chest, lets him wipe away her tears, accepts every ride, favor, and late-night call. When he finally says, "I'm in love with you, and I know you feel something for me," she shuts him down cold. Fair enough. No one owes anyone a relationship. But then she immediately demands his time. Emotional labor, body heat, his everything, while giving nothing except the occasionally guilty half smile. The moment Jacob pulls away, hanging with his pack after months as her emotional support animal, Bella flips out. She shows up furious that the Sam and the others have taken him away from her. She blames his friends for the fact that he no longer orbits her 24/7. This is a girl with zero intention of dating him, who feels entitled to 100% of his attention. Then, after choosing Edward in the most dramatic way possible, flying to Italy to stop a suicide, she wants him to be happy for her while simultaneously keeping him on standby in case she needs his support if Edward flakes out again. This isn't a love triangle. This is emotional exploitation dressed as tragic romance. Jacob is not the second chance boyfriend. Bella friend zones him with surgical precision and then acts surprised when the knife is still sticking out of his back. In the book, this is framed as Bella being broken and Jacob being selfless. In the movie, with actual human faces and lingering close-ups, it just looks cruel. New Moon wants us to root for Bella's epic love. But the person you feel worst for isn't the girl who lost her vampire. It's the boy who was never allowed to stop loving her, even when she gave him every reason to. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Now, we will come back to the Twilight franchise, but we are in the middle of a lot of films, so next I'm planning on discussing Volchok from 2009. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back here next time.